A man that needs no introduction to my audience, Dr. Leemon Baird, was nice enough to agree to come on and field a few questions around HTS and Smart Contracts 2.0. Leemon, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, well, let's dig right into it. I've been hearing a lot about how revolutionary tokens built on the base layer of Hedera are compared to smart contract tokens. Frankly, I'm not a developer, and I'd like to know why and what are the benefits of using HTS versus smart contract to build tokens.
Okay, bottom line is if you do something inside of a smart contract, it's a few hundred per second. If you do it at the native layer, it's 10,000 per second. But that's the bottom line. But the reason for that is very simple. And there's actually other reasons too. If you do something at the native layer, what that means is that you send a transaction to Hedera and Hedera transfers the token. So if you want to send someone a token, you just send us the transaction, we do it, and we can do that 10,000 times a second. And we do that with just a few seconds of time to finality, and we have proofs that it's ABFT and all sorts of good things. Very secure. You can also do it in a smart contract. And what that means is that you upload to Hedera a little program that you have written in Solidity, compiled down to bytecode. And then instead of Hedera simply moving a token from one place to another, instead Hedera goes down through your program line by line and does what that line says. Okay. And so it says, well, go look up some memory. So we go look up some memory. And then it says, well, now go change this variable. So we go change that variable. And you go through this long list of steps. And at the end, you've given your token to somebody. But that takes a long time. It's much better if you just do it at the bottom layer. And then it just does one thing. It gives a token to somebody.
Yeah.
So that's why having tokens at the native layer is really important. And of course, speed correlates with price. So there are ledgers where if you want to do a token transfer, it's going to cost you $30 because you have to run one of these smart contracts and it's slow and they can only do a dozen a second or whatever. And it's the problem is that it's a whole program that you have to run every single line of just to transfer the token. It's much better if you do it at the native layer. Also, we have put it at the native layer with all sorts of interesting extra power. So I can send you a token, or I can send you a token and you send me a different kind of token at the same time in an atomic transaction. So you don't lose your token unless you get mine, and I don't lose my token unless I get yours. It's guaranteed without any middleman. And so that is a nice thing. And we allow that. But we also allow three-way transfers where I give you a token and you give Alice a token and Alice gives me a token, or four-way transfers or five or whatever. There's lots of complexity. And we incorporate keys that are really fancy. So you don't just have multi-signature, 3 out of 5 people have to sign off on this transfer. We can do that if you want. If you want to do that, you can have one key. You can have one person has to sign off to transfer it. Or you could say 3 out of 5 or some other threshold. Or you could do something more complicated. You could do something like our organization has 27 members. Half of them have to sign off, but a member is an organization that has its own people inside of it, and a majority of them have to sign off for the member to have counted as signing off. It's like saying you need a majority of the Senate and a majority of the House, but you have to have both majorities in order to do it. So it's 2 of 2 and then a majority within each. You can set up really complicated multi-layer signatures like that, 15 layers deep. So we have all these cool things at the bottom layer that you don't even have to use a smart contract for.
Very cool. Very cool. So do you know of any other platforms that have a base layer token service like HTS?
Yeah. So for someone to have a base layer of HTS and have smart contracts that can access it and be ABFT, this is the security that we have. Nobody has that.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this is kind of cool. And the ABFT thing says, hey, we are secure. We have math proofs that we are secure, and we are still secure even if you could shut down one computer at a time with a DDoS attack.
Yeah.
There are other ledgers where you take turns being a leader. If you could just shut down the leader and follow the leader as it changes, you could shut down the whole network for as long as you want. That's what happens when you're not ABFT. But we're ABFT, which means we don't have a leader. We are completely decentralized in that every computer is equal, not even for a second is one computer more equal than the others. They're all exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so if you shut down a computer, we don't care. We just keep going ahead just as fast. It doesn't even slow us down.
Sure. Okay. So what are you most excited about that HTS tokens enable?
This is interesting. So today, there's lots of cool things going on with NFTs, by which people mean passing around cool little pictures. And there are things people are doing with DeFi, which usually means lending tokens to people who are lending tokens to people who are lending tokens. And it's all sort of all kept within our own community.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning. This is just like CryptoKitties showed you that smart contracts are cool.
Sure.
What we are going to see in the distant future, it's happening already, is things of real value in the world are being tokenized. Fine art and fine wine and real estate and gold and other things, diamonds, are all being tokenized. And these are being done on Hedera because Hedera is fast and inexpensive and extra secure and well governed. And this is the tip of the iceberg. This is the real tip of the iceberg, not just little pictures. The real thing that's going to happen is that everything of value in the real world is going to end up being tokenized. And why is that? It's for the same reason that decades ago, everything that was being kept as records on paper moved to computers. It gives you speed, it gives you security, it gives you flexibility, it gives you all of these good auditability, all of these good things, more power in a lot of ways. Well, the same thing happens. Why should a title search on your house take weeks and cost you thousands of dollars? Why can't it just happen in a few seconds on a ledger and you know the answer and it's 100% guaranteed? Mm-hmm. Why shouldn't everything of value be in a ledger? And this is the world we're heading towards.
Yeah.
And when I buy a house, I have to have a middleman because, well, I don't want to give you money unless I know who you are. And I want to know own the house, but I want to know that you're going to actually give it to me. And you don't want to give me a house if you don't know who I am. Mm-hmm. So I give my money to someone, you give your house to someone, and then they can swap. With ledgers, you don't need that. It gets rid of the middleman who has their own cut of it that's going on.
Sure,
gets rid of that.
It's more efficient. Yeah.
It's all more efficient.
Yeah.
Why are stock markets so expensive? Why do you have to have a professional broker that you pay to buy and sell stocks? Why isn't it all instantaneous on a ledger? Everything of value in the real world will eventually be representable in ledgers. And that includes things like stocks and bonds. It includes commodities. It includes even dollars themselves. And there are great stable tokens that are being wrapped around dollars, but people are talking about USDCs. So people are talking about, USDC is one example. CBDCs. People are talking about central bank digital currencies, mm-hmm. where countries themselves create tokens on a ledger representing money. This is the future we are headed to. And the reason is that it just completely eliminates whole categories of friction. Things become cheaper, faster, and safer.
Exciting. So you kind of already touched on this, but you've always mentioned that smart contracts were inherently less efficient than some other ways of using public DLT. But there were some people out there that were criticizing that despite things like Hedera crypto, HCS, and HTS transactions still being able to take place at 10,000 transactions per second, Hedera smart contracts could only process 14 transactions per second at the time. Did any of this criticism motivate you in any way to develop Smart Contracts 2.0?
Well, okay, so you left out some pieces of the picture there, but so we have a whole list of really cool things we want to implement, and we've been doing it for years. So right after we had our open access and everyone started using it, the very first thing we implemented was, hey, isn't it cool to have things at the native layer? We're going to let you put whatever you want at the native layer. So we had the Hedera consensus service. It lets you create an appnet, which is as flexible as a smart contract, but runs at the speed of the native layer. So instead of writing a smart contract that's slow but powerful, you just write your own appnet, which is fast and powerful. So that was the first thing we rolled out. And then we said, hey, now we're going to do a token service. And so we put tokens themselves at the native layer. So you didn't even have to build your own appnet or smart contract either, nothing. We just had tokens there for you. And we have all sorts of features that we put in there where you can mint your own token. And if you want, you can have an admin keys that allow you to do things like freezing it. But if you don't want to, you can mint a token that you never freeze. These are the sorts of power that we put into HTS. I should actually point out about that. This is giving people who mint a token, who create a new kind of token, power over it. They can decide, do I want to be the king that has total control? Or do I want to do it with no admin keys and I've given up all control? And it's up to them. And anyone who uses the token knows which flavor it is. So you can say, I want to be dictator, but everyone knows that you're a dictator and they can vote with their feet whether they like your dictatorship or not. Or you can say, this is totally decentralized, and people can then decide, ooh, I like that, and move in. It's entirely up to you. So we have a transaction for freezing tokens, but it's only the person who created the token that can decide whether that's even possible for their token. And then if they decided it isn't possible, they can never change their mind. It's locked in forever that can never be done on that token. As for our token, HBARs, they can never be frozen. So the entire network is written, all of our software is written so that no one can freeze HBAR accounts. No one can go out, the council can't sign a transaction and freeze an HBAR account. That's impossible. Or to freeze a smart contract or a HCS topic or a file. The council has no ability to go out and freeze things. It is very limited in what it can do. And the things that it does through a transaction that it signs, and the whole world gets to see it. Total transparency. And no single council member can ever go off and do these things. They can't spend treasury or whatever. It takes the majority of the council to agree. And even then, spending treasury only happens for the accounts that Hedera owns, not everybody else's accounts. And it is totally transparent. They can never act without people seeing it. So anyway, we have been building these features that people need in the order that they need them. So we gave you HCS that you could put anything you want at the native layer. Then we gave you HTS, which is tokens at the native layer, and extremely powerful tokens at that, at the native layer. And then we said, now the next step is we're going to resurrect the smart contracts. So we're going to make them hundreds of times a second rather than a dozen or more. Mm-hmm. And the reason is they can now do the little bit of things that you want to do that are too complicated even for our powerful HTS service. But you can combine them. You can mint an HTS token and transfer it at 10,000 a second and do those circular transfers and do the freezing or making it impossible to freeze. Either way, whatever you want, all that stuff. There's a KYC flag. There's a lot of really cool things you can do. And then when you want to do something really complicated, if it's an odd Tuesday of the month and you do something and I do something, then something happens to this token. If you want to do something really weird, you write a smart contract and it can reach out and do things to the token. You give the token an admin key that is the smart contract. And so then everybody can see how the smart contract works. And so it gives you the best of both worlds. So the tip of the iceberg, the little bit of really complicated things you want to do, you do in a smart contract on rare occasions. And the vast majority of what you're doing all the time, you do at 10,000 transactions a second and 1/10 of a cent to do one of these, 1,000th of a US dollar to do one of these transactions. So that gives you best of both worlds. But we have been adding new features continuously since we started, and we've been doing the ones that you needed most, that are most wanted and most needed and most useful. And now we are really happy about Smart Contracts 2.0. They add a great layer of extra control on top of the native stuff and on top of HCS.
So you pretty much are just following an ever-evolving roadmap and just giving the network what it needs and the tools to the developers that they need the most.
That's right. We are.
You.
Yeah. And we publish our roadmap. There's cool things coming. Wait till you see state proofs. You're going to be amazed. But continue.
Looking forward to it. Well, you actually kind of already touched on this, but maybe you can elaborate some more. Through Smart Contracts 2.0, as is, it can handle about 200 transactions per second. Even this just scratches the surface of what's possible with Hedera. How can developers further leverage crypto transfers, HCS, HTS, to get even more out of Hedera's new upgraded smart contracts?
Yeah. So what you do is you build a system that uses all of them. Mm-hmm. So you mint your coin at the native layer so that you get the speed and cheapness and security and everything of the native layer. For those rare things that you need to do very rarely, you can build a smart contract and it has the power to reach out and do things with your token. You give it the key to your token. You give it the power. On the token, you have a key, and usually that means that a human has to use a secret key, a private key to sign it. But you can also make the key be the name of a smart contract. And then whenever that smart contract wants to do something, it's as if it had used a private key to sign something.
Okay.
It doesn't actually have private keys, but it's like a fake private key. And the smart contract is like it's the person that signs it. So if your account has one key, then the smart contract could be given that key and it has ultimate power. Or again, you could do a threshold key. The smart contract has to agree, but some people have to agree. There's all sorts of things you can do that are interesting. Scheduled transactions are interesting in this case too, which is also something coming very soon.
Good.
But yeah, we can talk about that too, because that makes smart contracts more powerful. But you also mentioned HCS. If you want to, you can create, say you want privacy. You can create a private network. You can do a Hyperledger network, and you plug in a little thing at the bottom, and suddenly it's getting its consensus, its trust from Hedera using HCS, the consensus service. And so you can create your own private network where everything is encrypted and no one in the outside world can participate and no one can see what you're doing. And all these encrypted transactions flow through Hedera to be put into order. And so you have the trust of Hedera, but you have the privacy of a private network, and you'd have the speed of a private network. And you can have that interoperating with your tokens that are on Hedera. So you can have these private tokens that no one in the world sees except just your little group of people. And then you have the public tokens that the whole world can see, and you can have them working back and forth, sending messages back and forth and doing things. And so this is how you can bring HCS in with AppNets as well. And then HCS isn't just AppNets, it's also immutably recording things forever, information.
Sure.
And so you can be storing information through HCS as well. And every time you send a message, it's only 1/10 of a cent, and it's stored forever, and the whole world gets to see it forever. So you can use HCS for extreme publicity and transparency or extreme privacy. It's up to you. And you can do a little bit of each and do both.
Yeah, our online notary is great. So you seemed pretty excited about the scheduled transactions. Please tell us more about that.
Sure. So it is kind of a pain to get multiple signatures on a transaction. And so, and you can do it, and we do it. Our council signs transactions, and we take a week for the council to get their computers and sign the transactions, and we collect them, glue all the transaction signatures together onto the transaction, and we submit it to Hedera. And if our computer was down that day and we didn't get to submit it, we'd have to go back and get everyone to sign a new transaction. It's a pain.
Yeah.
What's nice, though, is that you could schedule a transaction to occur in the future, and then people can do a transaction that adds a signature to it. And then when it gets enough signatures, it executes, which is kind of nice. You don't have to remember to submit it at the right moment. It just happens. And you can say, it will only execute at this time if I have enough signatures by then. Or you can say, execute as soon as you get enough signatures. Either way, you can set it up either way. And so this is a feature. We have it actually right now for a half hour into the future. You can just, anytime during the next half hour, you can sign it, which is useful for collecting signatures. But what you really want is be able to put it weeks or months or years into the future. And that is what scheduled transactions will be doing in the near future. And think about this. Smart contracts on every ledger in Solidity, smart contracts are these things that run programs when you make a call to them. So if you wanted to do something in a smart contract, you have to make a call to it and you pay a little bit of fees and then it executes what you did. But a human has to actually call it to make something happen. But what if you wanted to do something like a bond that is making payments every month? Once a month, the smart contract needs to make a payment. Well, how does it know when to do it? Some human has to remember to send it a message once a month, to make a call to it once a month, to wake it up and make it do the thing, to make it do the payment. Now you can set it up to be secure. The human can't steal the money. All they can do is just do the call that triggers the thing that it wants to do. But it still is reliant on the human to call it. And people have even set up whole networks that do nothing but make such calls into Ethereum or into us or somewhere to trigger a smart contract. That's dumb. That should be at the native layer. When we have scheduled transactions, a smart contract, while it's running the first time, one of the things it can do is call the Hedera transaction that creates a scheduled transaction that a month from now will call the smart contract. It makes some payments on its bond. And then before it goes to sleep, it makes another one for 1 month in the future. And it just keeps doing that forever. And now it's alive. You can have actual smart contracts that are living in a real sense. And since it has its own store of HBARs, it could be funded to run for millions of years. And it could be set up so that it maybe earns money in some ways, in which case it's alive, it's an entity that will run forever, and it just keeps going forever. Anyway, that's just something fun that's coming. There's a lot of really cool things on our roadmap that we've published that are just going to be fun. And yeah.
Well, they already have tons of great tools they can use on Hedera. What are you expecting out of the hackathon that's coming up in May?
Oh, I can't wait. So we're doing a hackathon. We've done a bunch of hackathons in the past, and the outcomes have been fantastic. People really submit very cool things that they've built on Hedera. And we've always said, hey, build anything you want, and if it's really cool, you get a prize. This time, there is a topic. The topic is smart contracts. Build really cool things with Smart Contracts 2.0. They're super fast, they're cheap, and they interoperate with our token service at the native layer, and they interoperate with our consensus service at the native layer, and we'll actually add the ability for them to interoperate with every single transaction in the system, so they'll be able to do files and everything else too. But smart contract, right now we've already implemented a smart contract can create another smart contract. It's just great. And with scheduled transactions, they'll be able to come alive. It's like Frankenstein. It's wonderful. So sorry, I was talking about the future. For the hackathon, you don't have all that future stuff. All you have is this super fast, powerful system that already interoperates with the native tokens and the native HCS. Okay, that's what you have. And I cannot wait to see what people are going to invent and what creative ideas this community is going to come up with. This community is just incredible, and I can't wait to see what comes out of the hackathon. It just, it's so much fun.
It'll be exciting. It'll be exciting. We'll try to get the information of when it's happening and what developers need to do to get involved. But Leemon, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. It's been great. Thanks.